The Emperor's original vision, a secular dream for humanity. To study the history of the Imperium is to confront the central enigma of its existence, the tyrannical machine of the 41st millennium, a galactic theocracy built on dogma, fear, and the worship of a god-emperor, stands in stark and violent opposition to the future its founder originally envisioned. Long before he became a silent idol on a golden throne, the Emperor of mankind conceived of a radically different destiny for his species. His ultimate goal was not an empire of faith, but a unified, secular human civilization driven by reason, logic, and the mastery of its own evolutionary potential. This grand ambition was built upon a single powerful doctrine intended to forever unchain humanity from the superstitions of its past. At the heart of the Emperor's philosophy was the imperial truth, a state-mandated atheistic doctrine designed as the intellectual foundation for humanity's future. It was not merely a set of ideals, but a cultural weapon, enforced by orators and backed by military might, intended to replace the fears of old night with the illuminating power of knowledge. The imperial truth was founded on three core tenets that defined the Emperor's vision for a new age of man: atheism and rationalism. The doctrine held that the universe was a rational, understandable place governed by physical laws. It sought to systematically replace superstition, faith, and mysticism with science, logic, and empirical evidence. Self-mastery. Humanity's potential was to be found within itself, not in supplication to external powers. The ultimate goal was mastery of one's own mind, body, and latent psychic abilities. Rejection of divinity. The very concepts of worship, divinity, and spiritual hierarchies were seen as profound obstacles to human ascension. The Emperor taught that such beliefs were relics of an ignorant past that had only ever anchored humanity to fear and division. This conviction was famously summarized in his own stark rhetoric. Mankind could never rise to its rightful place unless the last stone from the last church was cast down onto the last priest. This policy was not merely theoretical. During the unification wars on Terra, the Emperor systematically dismantled the planet's old religions. This campaign culminated in a symbolic and final act, the destruction of the last standing church on the planet. In a move that demonstrated his method was as much philosophical as it was physical, he engaged its defenders in a final debate before razing it to the ground, an event meant to signal the definitive end of spiritual authority and the dawn of an age of reason. To spread this philosophy across the stars, the Emperor required a vast and powerful instrument, an empire unlike any that had come before. The grand strategy, scaffolding for ascension. A common historical error is to view the nascent Imperium of the Great Crusade as the Emperor's final objective. The evidence, however, overwhelmingly supports the interpretation of the Imperium as a temporary scaffold, a means to a much greater end. The emperor conceived of the Imperium as a robust political and military structure strong enough to unify the scattered worlds of humanity and protect them as they grew into their full potential. It was designed to be a vehicle for enlightenment, spreading the imperial truth and creating the stable conditions necessary for the next stage of human evolution. It was never meant to fossilize into the oppressive, stagnant, and religious juggernaut it would later become. The ultimate goal, an evolved humanity. The long-term vision behind this grand strategy was the guided evolution of the human race. Evidence from early historical archives suggests the emperor's ultimate aim was to shepherd humanity into a fully psychic species. This species-wide ascension was inextricably linked to the imperial truth's tenet of self-mastery. Each individual mastering their own latent psychic potential was the foundational requirement for the entire species to transcend the physical and mental limitations that had defined its history, and finally master the volatile energies of the Imperium. Yet, for all its meticulous planning, the emperor's grand strategy contained a deep and tragic flaw, one that would see his greatest ambitions inverted. The foundational irony, intent versus outcome. The central tragedy of the emperor's story is one of profound irony. His relentless galaxy-spanning crusade to eradicate faith and superstition ultimately laid the groundwork for the largest and most oppressive religion the galaxy has ever known, one centered entirely on him. This divergence between his original intent and the eventual outcome is the foundational fracture upon which the modern Imperium is built. The original vision rested on three pillars: the emperor as a planner, not a god; the Imperium as a means, not an end; and the total eradication of superstition. The tragedy is how these pillars were fractured and inverted, twisting the planner into a deity, the means into a dogmatic end, and the war against faith into the genesis of a new and terrible god. In the end, the man who despised divinity became the object of the galaxy's largest religion, derailing a dream of secular ascension for 10,000 years of darkness. But a vision requires execution, and the emperor did not walk the stars alone.